Welcome, 239 Uncensored, everything Southwest Florida and beyond. And we have a great guest on this podcast today. We have Ian Rudnick. And Ian, the reason why we have you on, more than one reason, but you're a friend of mine, right?
Yeah.
You're a friend of the show and the 239 Uncensored, and you are running for Naples City Council. What's that? What's that feel like?
I retired in May of this year. So I thought I'd be out of public service maybe for at least a year before I got back into it. But here I am, the election's coming up. So I'm back in it.
That's awesome. And you know what's so good about it? It's enlightening to have, younger group of people and younger people on the board or on the council, right? So in just getting into local government, I think it's important that you're getting involved with that. I think that's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, almost 17 years in government service. So, I have a 5-year-old daughter. So at my age, I know I have 13 years before she's even out of high school. So, it's important that, what I do translates into the next, decade and beyond, because, obviously I want her to, grow up in a great city. I want her to be able to go off to college and maybe come back just like I did and raise a family in this city. So, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. So, it's super important what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. So that goes back. Just give us a little bit of a further background as to a little bit about your family, how you ended up in Naples. And again, a little bit, just reiterate why it's important that you are running for local government, city council in Naples. Give us a little rundown on that.
Yeah. So my family moved us down here about 30 years ago. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school in Naples. Then obviously, I went off to college, did my 4 years, came back to Naples, got hired by the Naples Police Department, worked there, in different areas. I was on the SWAT team for 14 of those years, went from SWAT operator to team leader and eventually the assistant commander, was promoted, to sergeant, worked patrol, community policing, finally finished off working in the crime suppression team, which is essentially a narcotics unit, undercover unit, also working with 2 federal task force, Homeland Security and the DEA. So I had a good career and I loved every minute of it. And then, I retired just recently and, was focusing on my real estate business, which I started in 2013. So I was kind of working 2 jobs since then. And I've been focusing on that and now focusing on getting on the council.
Yeah. And I know you're successful in real estate, which is great. One of the things that is very interesting is you are the youngest candidate that we know of right now that's running for city council. However, you've lived in Naples the longest out of those candidates. It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I hope that this is what the future is going to look like. People getting more involved, a little bit younger, because they have more to lose. They're raising families in this city. They're not aging out to the point where 20 years from now, what they left behind, they're not going to see it. Guys like me, we're going to see that. I'm still going to probably be working in 20, 30 years. I'm still around. So it's important when what we're doing, and I hope other people follow.
Yeah, do you think it's important to bring a younger perspective to the city council and to Naples in general? I mean, because I talked to some of my family members, and we all love Naples. We like the way it is. However, some of the people that my daughter, for one, she's like, Naples is just older folks. But do you think it's good to bring a younger perspective to the city council?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, families are coming down here. They're moving from the Northeast, from the Midwest, I mean, everywhere. And they're coming down to Naples. And, if we try to keep the same mindset that we've had for the past 30, 40 years, it's not going to be beneficial to them. So, we need to be open to things. And, one thing I do when things come about, just like I did in law enforcement, when I had detectives assigned to me, we took every issue, every case that came in, and we worked it from beginning to end. And that's important. And that's something that I don't think anybody on council really understands and is really capable of doing, because they haven't done it. They haven't, gone every day and sat down there and started from scratch every single time, every single issue, just like we worked a case. You start from the beginning, work it all the way to the end. You don't bring any, predisposed or any, any ideas that you're just, well, this is just how we've always done it, and this is how we're going to do it. No, you need to take every single case as it comes.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And myself, I've been in law enforcement for 31. I just retired in April as well. Yeah, I think that law enforcement perspective and outlook, as far as like, we're here to solve problems. And I know we're going to mention that in a little bit, but we actually have to solve the problems. And a lot of people think that law enforcement, you go and just put a fire out. But the reality is you're constantly putting fires out in your job. But I think that if you have that perspective of let's solve the issue, then we won't have to keep responding to these same issues over and over.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And I know you've done that.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't just, push something aside. And obviously, that's what council's been doing. They've been basically kicking the can down the road. They're not making decisions. Everything is, well, put it off, put it off, put it off. Well, in law enforcement, we couldn't do that, and when I was, rising through the ranks on the SWAT team and I was the assistant commander, when I showed up on scene, that was my scene. Didn't matter who was on scene. Could have been the chief of police. They looked to me because I was the highest ranking tactical operator on scene. So kicking the can down the road, unacceptable. It can't happen, and it won't happen. And that's not the type of person I am, and that's not the type of person I'm going to be on council. I mean, I'm a problem solver. When society had a problem, they called the police. When the police had a problem, they called me. And I want to bring that same drive and that same problem solving to the community and to my my service with council.
Yeah, and I think also too, you have to admit, modern day law enforcement, and not to keep pushing back on the law enforcement background that you have, but you have to be a listener, right? You have to be able to communicate, because we all know that maybe back in the day, you could kind of just ruffle in and say, I'm the police, you're going to do what I tell you to do. But nowadays, we have to problem solve, we have to listen, we have to communicate with people, and I think having those skills and having that background would be a great benefit for someone on the city council.
With the age of technology and how much data there is pumped into people every single day and how quick it is. I mean, you can't just pull the wool over somebody's eyes and say, oh, well, this is just how it is, and you move on. No, I mean, you need to be transparent. You need to be able to communicate with people. And honestly, you can't get the job done without the community and any job.
Yeah, no, it's important. One thing, kind of when you opened up a little bit on the podcast, you talked about Naples being one of the best cities in the world, right? So no matter where you're from in the United States, you feel your city is always the best city. But without a doubt, Naples, Florida, it's on the map as being one of the best cities in the world. And in the United States, I think we were just put as number 2 best place to retire in the United States. To make that list, that's like unbelievable, and we do it consistently.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What makes Naples so great?
I mean, and you're in the real estate business, and you understand it. When a customer calls you up, and they could be anywhere in the country, they could be overseas, an international customer. You tell them you're from Naples, and they're looking at it, and they're like, wow, Naples, wow, that it resonates with people, and the word has gotten out there, how beautiful Naples is, how safe it is, how wonderful it is to live here. And I mean, there's no shortage of people just oohing and eyeing when they hear, oh, well, I live in Naples. I mean, they think like, wow, like that's where you're going back to. You go on vacation, you get on a plane to come back, and everyone's like, oh, I'm going to fly here, connecting flight, I got to take here and go. And you're like, well, my connecting flight's going to take me to Naples. And they're like, wow, that, like, why would you leave? Why would you go on vacation? You live on vacation.
Right. Right. And I know that's a good thing, because every time I go on vacation, I love to go, right? I love to leave and go on vacation. Yeah. But when I come back, I'm like, holy smokes, I spent a lot of money going on vacation, and Naples is the place to be. I mean, you drive, it's nice, it's manicured, it's well taken care of. People for the most part do the right thing with the infrastructure and setting everything up. And it's just a nice place to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we need to keep it that way.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, my next question is, how do we preserve or manage Naples? Because I think that's a super fine balance. So how do we do it? Keep Naples very nice, but also manage and preserve it for the future. How do we do it?
There's all the palm trees and clean water in the world. won't mean anything if it's not safe. So I think first and foremost is the safety of your community, and that's something that I spent such a long period of my life, essentially my entire post collegiate life, doing. And if you don't reinvest in your employees, you don't reinvest in your police, your fire, solid waste, all these different things. If all those divisions are not properly funded, the employees are not properly compensated, the infrastructure is going to collapse. So you can't plant palm trees to make your police department better. You need to reinvest in your police department. You need to reinvest in your fire department. All of those things are super important. And I've met with both of those departments. I've met with most of the city departments and discussed that with them and said, what do you need to continue to give us the level of service that residents expect and visitors expect in Naples? And we've had a real long discussions about what needs to be done. And it's something that I agree with them on. And I'm gonna essentially lead the charge in getting the rest of council to follow me on.
Yeah, and I think that resonates through Collier County as well. I know obviously Naples is in Collier County, but that relationship and partnership that we have with law enforcement, fire, city council, with county commissioners, that's like a huge thing to work together to keep Naples nice. I think that's one of the big things we really have to do. And there's going to be some opportunity for things to grow here. How do we manage that?
Yeah, no, it's Collier County is going to grow no matter what the city of Naples does. I mean, there's no stopping that. A good majority of my real estate sales are east of Collier Boulevard, so they're outside the city. However, the number one thing somebody says to me, where's a good place to go on Fifth Avenue? Where's a good beach to go to downtown? And you go to any city, you want to go downtown. Everyone wants to go downtown. You want to see the downtown area of where you're moving. So managing all of that traffic that's going to come into the city, again, goes back to your infrastructure, goes back to your employees. How are they going to manage? When we have a 4th of July parade and everybody comes from East Naples, North Naples, all over Collier County, down to the Naples Pier, down to that area, because they want to see the fireworks. They want to see the parades and that's something that we need to manage through our infrastructure. And obviously, through some sort of controlled growth and some sort of, common sense. We can't just let buildings crumble and say, well, small town feel and that's it. We can't just let roadways, well, we're not going to deal with those because we want to keep small town feel. Well, we need to look at that. And we need to see, well, how can we make this city more efficient? How can we deal with the growth in Collier County? Because, Naples isn't really developing. I mean, you can redevelop, but there's no land really to develop at this point. But we need to deal with Collier County growing because there's land to develop in Collier County and it is developing.
Yeah, and you got a really good point that the people that live in Collier County, I think we're pushing up to close to 400,000 residents. And that's just full time, right? So, and you're over 500,000 when the season comes in, and to be quite honest with you, you don't even really see it that much anymore. But they all go down to Naples. I mean, the city of Naples, they all work that way, and people who come to visit, they all want to go to the city of Naples, but they want to see a vibrant downtown. And I think over the last 10 years, it's been amazing how things have been done down there and how they've improved. I mean, I moved here 32 years ago, and you went down to downtown Naples. It was like a deserted, old shoe stores and things like that. But I think the development they have has been very good. But I think that you can manage it and probably listen to other people's ideas as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked 2 years as the TIF officer down on Fifth Avenue South. To see where it is now versus when I was down there is amazing. I mean, they have done an amazing job on Fifth Avenue, and it's bringing people there. It's bringing revenue to those businesses. And that needs to continue. I mean, we can't just stop doing that because, okay, it's great now, but if we don't continue to harvest that mentality, then eventually it's gonna revert back to when it became a little sleepier and, things weren't properly developed and it wasn't the Fifth Avenue that we have today. So that's something that's super important. We need to keep that going.
Yeah. So to do that, you mentioned it, you have to make sure your employees are taken care of, right? So the people that work for the city of Naples, not all of them can afford to live in the city of Naples, right? So how do we work on that balance? I know we have some labor issues and things like that. How is that balance reached?
Um, you know, one thing I've seen, and being, working the two jobs, being in law enforcement and working, in the real estate business, I had the luxury and the honor of selling a lot of the homes to our new employees. And one thing that I saw over the years was we went from, an employee living within a certain, couple miles of the city. Then it went to out on the county line in Collier County. And now I'm seeing more and more of the new people coming into the city that are living in Lee County. They're living in Cape Coral, Fort Myers. Now you're working a midnight shift. You're working, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then you have to drive, over an hour to get to your house in Cape Coral. And then you're going to hit traffic and all that. I mean, it's just, it's unacceptable. We can't have employees doing that. And the only thing that you're going to be able to do to solve that is start looking at their wages, start looking at, development. What are we doing for housing? What kind of housing are these people going to be able to get into? I ran a SWAT team, and if I had a guy living in Cape Coral and we had someone who barricaded inside of a home, well, now I have to wake him up, has to get his gear together, get the kids squared away or whatever, deal with family issues. By the time he got in, I mean, you're talking an hour and a half. By the time he's geared up, maybe even 2 hours. And I mean, that's unacceptable. Your employees living that far away. It's unacceptable. And, we need to look at how are we going to basically, get affordable housing out there. We have to work with, people to figure that out.
Yeah. Do you think there's an opportunity for maybe the city to work with the county in conjunction to come up with some sort of, maybe not those folks living within the city limits, but very close to it with some sort of, agreements and communication? Is that something that would be plausible?
Yeah, absolutely. We can't just close ourselves off and say, well, the property value is just too expensive. So we can't do anything for you. Too bad, deal with it. Well, no, I mean, not too bad. You have county leaders that you can work with, and the city needs to work with them and say, hey, where can we get housing for these people? If I have a new person coming in, and I've talked to guys that do hiring, and I said, what are you telling them? Because they're asking. They're saying, hey, where can I live? Where, I don't know. I don't know. That's always the answer. I don't know. We don't know where you can live. $52,000 a year. Where are you going to live? Can't even live in Collier County. So absolutely, city leaders and county leaders need to work together, and they also need to work with the state. There's so much more that we can do.
Yeah, I agree. Now we have some labor issues, and you said you've reached out to, the public safety and other city folks. What are those issues, and what can we do better?
Yeah.
Or what can the city do better?
So your department directors should not always feel like they're butting heads with city council, and with the mayor and whoever is in a political seat for the city. You put people in charge of running different organizations throughout the city. And if you constantly, have your finger on them and you're micromanaging them and you're constantly pressuring them, you're going to push them out. And we've seen that. Our city manager left, our assistant city manager left, our interim city manager left, and we had to pull him from another division within the city. Now we have essentially, our fire chief now acting as our city manager. I mean, how many more times can you keep pulling from other divisions, just to get, a city manager position filled until we can hire somebody permanently? So, obviously our city leaders, our politicians who are in the city need to work better with these people. You cannot constantly hammer them with things, say, well, we're going to go after them. We're going to do it. No, you put them in charge of doing a job. Now, if they're not doing their job, that's different, but give them an opportunity to do their job. And I don't think we do enough of that.
So basically bridging that communication or making them feel like their decision is important instead of trying to override and micromanage that type of situation.
Absolutely. I put for SWAT, I had team leaders. I put team leaders in charge of things. I had, a training coordinator. I put them in charge of training. And I didn't stay on top of them and constantly micromanage what they were doing. I gave them an opportunity to succeed. And you'd be surprised if you give these people an opportunity to succeed, they'll thrive.
Yeah.
But if you constantly micromanage them and pull things away from them and constantly, say everything you do is wrong, everything you do is, well, no, give them an opportunity. Maybe they have a way of doing these things. Give them a little bit of a lead and let them do it.
Yeah, that's very important. The past election, we lost a lot of very, very key leaders in the community, right? They've been around here for years. I know that we want to include them because they have been involved in our community for so long. How are you going to foster those relationships and make sure that these key leaders are still there and participating and helping out in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. You've had people that have been in the political arena for the city of Naples for decades. And they've watched the city go through growing pains. They've watched the housing crisis. They've seen all of these different things. And to just kind of put them out to pasture, it's unacceptable. Even the people, we're going through a city council race right now. And if some of the incumbents don't get reelected, it doesn't mean I'm not going to reach out to them if I'm elected. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you reach out to them so that you obviously don't make the same mistakes that maybe they made? Maybe they can reflect on that and say, hey, I kind of went down a bad path on this. Don't do what I did. Why would I start out and go down those same paths when they've already seen it and they can explain why it happened? So you can't just push people aside and say, well, I have no use for you anymore.
Yeah. How important is that institutional knowledge? We kind of discussed it a little bit prior to.
You can't even put a price tag on that. You really can't. I mean, there's no price that you can put on the knowledge of somebody who's done this 10, 20, 30 years. I mean, they've seen it all.
Yeah, they've been around, and I'm fortunate to have worked with them in the past in several different types of projects and things like that. So I know what they bring to the table.
Yeah,
really, really important. What makes you a good candidate for city council? Why do you believe you would be the right person for it?
I'm open to listening to the issues. I'm open to listening to new ideas. I'm also open to listening to the old ideas and finding a way to basically bridge that gap and make them the ideas that are the best for the city. And I've worked for the city. I mean, my whole post collegiate life up until May 17th of this year, I worked for the city. So when everyone was asleep at night, I was driving those streets. I was a supervisor out there. I don't know any other candidate who's driven every street within the city of Naples. Well, I have. There's alleyways throughout the city that people don't even know about. I've been in the homes in some of the most affluent people who are in the city. And, I've been in homes where, people are, working class. So I've basically been out there when no other candidate has. And that knowledge is, I mean, obviously you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, and I can back that knowledge just knowing that I worked at the county, so I'm very familiar with the whole county. Yeah. And to have somebody that really can know exactly the heartbeat of the community, I think a police officer, a firefighter, public safety worker, or somebody who's actually hit their feet on those streets would definitely make sense to be, the best candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. When they talk about traffic issues, well, I've responded to those traffic crashes, those serious traffic crashes, those traffic fatalities. I've been the supervisor on scene when those things have happened. So someone might say, well, traffic looked pretty bad today when I was driving into work. Well, I actually know how bad it is because I've seen the statistics because I've been there. I've been there on the street and I've seen that. I've seen the kids in cars after crashes. I've seen the things that, and that society will probably never see. And that gives you a perspective of the city that you just can't teach somebody.
Yeah. So this kind of just reiterates what we just asked. Your background in law enforcement, how does that make you a good candidate for city council? How does that help you? And again, you pretty much answered it, but just jump back on it again a little bit. Maybe the whole question was a little bit backwards, but how does that make you a good candidate?
It makes me understand every single different neighborhood throughout the city. I've been in every single neighborhood and I've met with, key people in those neighborhoods, that, the leaders of those neighborhoods, the association presidents, things like that. And I've talked to people, and I understand what people want. When you talk to so many people in a day, I mean, police officers talk to more people in one day than most businessmen will talk to in a year. I mean, it's just you're out there. You do all these community events. I've worked all the parades, and I've worked, demos that we've done for SWAT demos. When you go out there and you do these, your community outreach programs. I've taken kids on the cop with a shop. I've taken them in and bought toys for them. I mean, so when you're out there and you're actually talking to their parents, and you're talking to the kids, and you're basically talking to everybody from every walk of life that lives, works, or plays in the city, you get a perspective that you can't get from anyone else. I mean, you just really can't.
Yeah, and I could definitely understand that, because I've been in that similar situation. Last question: How do you envision Naples 20 years from now?
I envision Naples being even more beautiful than it is now. I envision that, when you say you're from Naples and 99% of the people are in awe, well, 100% of them will be.
Amen.
I mean, it is going to, and Collier County in general, I think it's going to be the #1 destination. I mean, people are going to love this city, love this county more than they do today, if that's even possible. And I think it is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Ian, I'd like to thank you for coming on 239 Uncensored. It's been awesome.
I appreciate it.
And again, I'm a little bit, I don't want to use the word bias, but truly, if I didn't believe that, you were a good candidate in that law enforcement background and all that stuff didn't help, I wouldn't have you on. So, I really think that, having that background and having that experience is going to be a huge component in making Naples a better place, if you can make it. But I think the working environment, making everybody work together, communicating, the synergy, I think having that background is going to be huge. But I want to wish you the best of luck, and anything obviously we can do to help out, let us know. 239.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's great. 239, that's censored. Everything Southwest Florida and beyond. And usually what we say is when we're done, we are out. So let's go ahead and let's do it. We are out. Thank you. Appreciate it.